Hey guys, I'm Voren and welcome to my second episode on making an audio recorder in Godot. This is part of my From Zero to Publishing series. During this series we will be making this audio recorder from zero all the way to publishing it on itch.io. But anyway, let's start with making the UI. So in the last episode we went over how I made the layout, how I kind of designed it and put it together, but I forgot to mention one thing. I normally always start with a list of features to know what and how the UI should look like. For example, for this project I needed a record button to record audio. I also wanted to be able to play the previous recording so I could hear if everything was correct or not. I also wanted to save the recording and also check if there's actually sounds. Because of the small amount of features, I kind of decided to make it into a floating window instead, because we would not need that much UI to begin with. But that was just something that I quickly wanted to mention. So let's start with making the UI in Godot. First up, the interface node. We should change it into a panel container. It will make much more sense instead of having control node and putting a panel container inside of that. So let's do that. Inside of this panel container, let's go to theme overrides and create a new style box. And inside of here, we can change it so we have rounded corners for our application. I personally like to have corner radius of 7. It's not too much, it's not like too low that it's not noticeable. I think 7 is a good amount. And to make the other UI elements not stick to the borders as much, we will add some content margins. And I think for this 3 should do it. And for the color, I'll be going for 3C, 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 because it's not too dark, it's not too light, it's a good amount, I think. And Godot just crashed. And when we start the project, now we have rounded corners. The window is still big, we'll fix that later on. Right now you cannot really move the window because we don't have a title bar. I'm moving the window because of my window manager. Right now moving the window is not possible, that's something we will implement later on. And for the next part, let's make the title bar itself. For this we will have a VBox container, and inside of here we will add another panel container. The only thing that we will need in here is an HBox container. We will also need a label for the title, and we will need to add a texture button for the close button so we can close the program. That button is something that we need to implement ourselves, as we don't have the normal title bar because it's a custom window. The title label, I will expand it horizontally so the exit button will stay on the right of the window. And let's quickly set the text of the title label to audio recorder. But when looking at this bar, you may notice there's something kind of off. The panel is not really going to the borders. But also when opening it in a big window, it's kind of noticeable. The text is also kind of small. But let's first make certain that the box is actually going to the edge of the window. To fix this, let's create a new style box. For the title bar color, let's go for 191919. It's darker than the background, so it will stand out a bit. And for fixing the border thing, let's go into expand margins and put everything to 3. We don't really need to put this on the bottom, this will just be empty space anyway, so just for the left, right and top. But now you may notice we did lose our rounded corner because of this. We could add the rounded corner to this style box as well, but let's go to the interface nodes. And under visibility, you can click clip children, and let's put this on clip plus draw. And now we should have our rounded corners again. Basically what it does is it takes the style box and all the empty pixels from that style box are becoming invisible for the children as well. They're basically getting clipped. As for this title label, I just realized I put the style box on the wrong node. It's on the title label. Let's quickly copy this to the title bar and delete it from the title label. And to make the text bigger, let's create a label setting. And for font size, let's go for something like 32, or maybe that's a little bit too big. Yep, that's too big. And how about 18? Okay, 18 does look better, I think. I do think that the text is a little bit too close to the edge, so let's go back to our stylebox flat and let's add some content margins. Let's go for 2 or 3, let's take 2, and let's also put that on the right for our exit button, so that one is not completely against the edge as well. And talking about the exit button, let's put the texture on top. To do that, I already created some assets, so I will just copy these over. You will be able to find these inside of the GitHub repo. So I'll quickly copy these to the project that we are working on right now, to our audio recorder. For this, I'll go into the source folder and I'll create a new folder called assets, and in that folder I will create another folder called icons. I made these icons in a program called Inkscape. It's a very easy program to make SVG files in, SVG textures. The benefit of these type of textures is that you can scale them as much as you want and they won't be blocky or anything. One downside about SVG files inside of Godot is text. SVG files with text won't display properly inside of Godot. The exit button is actually just an X, and I first had to convert it to a path because text does not show up, which is kind of annoying. But with our icons inside of Godot, we just drag the exit texture to the texture button. The size is kind of off right now because of the texture size of the SVG file itself, but we can easily change that. We ignore texture size, and then for the sizing itself, let's go for 18 pixels. And I forgot, but we should set stretch mode to keep aspect centered. And when we launch the project now, it's a nice button. We still cannot move the window when dragging the title bar, but we still need to do the whole coding aspect, but that's for next episodes. And now time for the bottom area, the main content of the window. So let's first go back to our design. When looking at the design, you can kind of separate the whole bottom area in two specific areas. We have the buttons and then we have the spectrum sides. To separate those two things inside of Godot, let's add an HBox container. Then we add a panel container for the spectrum part of the audio recorder. And let's just call this spectrum. And first thing we should do with this thing is expand it so it takes up all the horizontal space. Inside of the spectrum panel, let's add a new stylebox flat. And let's take the same black that we took for the title bar. I added that color previously in the swatches, to the swatches. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. When you make software, it's kind of nice to limit yourself to a couple of colors to keep the theme more even. To remove colors from this list, you can use the right mouse button, and to add, just press the plus. And this is basically our spectrum panel done for now. The rest will be done through coding. But now we have this button area. Something that we could do for this is create another V-box and an H-box for the top buttons, but let's not do that. Doing it that way will create more nodes, and we can also just use a node called the H-flow container, and I will show you how you can use it for this specific case. So after adding the H-flow container, we add a texture button for the record button, another texture button, like we can basically duplicate the previous one and make that into the play button. And then we need a normal button for the save button. Right now they're very, very tiny and the texture buttons are not even visible. First of all, let's select our texture buttons and let's ignore the texture size. And stretch mode should be on keep aspect centered. For the record button, the texture should be the not recording texture. For the play button, it's the play icon. And for the save button, we just change the text to save. To make the texture buttons visible, we need to give them a minimum size. I'll be going for 40 pixels to 40 pixels. Seems like a good size to me. Right now, they just create a line, like it's a vertical line. So let's fix that so it looks more like the example. Right now, the spectrum size basically expands horizontally. So the H-flow container, we should basically set a minimum size inside of the horizontal direction. So let's set X to 200 and the Y back to 0. And for these buttons, we basically want them to expand horizontally as well. To get the save button to be under the record and play button, we need to shrink, like make the minimum size of the H-flow container a little bit smaller. At some point, the save button will go underneath them because the minimum size of the two buttons on top don't allow for enough size for also the play button's minimum size. So it goes to the bottom. And that's how you can create this kind of a layout with just one container instead of creating a separate H-box and V-box container. But anyway, I will put this to 100 pixels in total. And now there's a little bit of a bigger problem. If you look at the total project, it is quite a big window. So let's resize this a little bit to a better size that it would be more fitting for a floating window. So we can just drag this size of the interface panel around a little bit until we have a shape size that we like. And we will take the size of this window right now to, well, of the interface node to change the window size of the project. But before changing the window size, I kind of want to first fix these corners. Because right now, if we zoom in, we can see the corner of the spectrum panel. It's not rounded. So inside of corner radius for the panel style box, we put that on 7 for the bottom right. And then if you look at our save button, same problem, the corner is not evenly rounded. So let's add a new style box and let's change the color to the exact same color as the wave panel to keep everything a little bit similar. And then for the corner radius, let's put that on 7 for the bottom left. Right now the sizing is, like the spacing in between the different nodes is still kind of off, so let's fix that by going into the HFlow container and fixing the size there a little bit. Let's start by putting the V separation of the HFlow container to something like 10. And now it's basically a challenge, a little bit of balancing things out. So let's change it to 5 for V separation instead. And in the main V box, let's also add separation to 5. Let's add 5 to separation. That way there's a little bit more different spacing between the title bar and the main UI content. If you really want to go pixel peeping, you can also use the measuring tool inside of Godot to really make certain that all the sizes are correct. So yeah, our V separation for the HFlow container needs 1 more pixel to be even. And right now there's still like the spacing under the save button, and I think that's mainly because of the HBox container. So let's disable the expand on the HBox container and that should be fixed. And when we go back to our interface panel, we can shrink the size a little bit in the Y and the height. And the value won't normally go lower than what the minimum size is of the nodes inside. So for us, that's around 106. To make the number a little bit more rounded in the width, let's go for 350. I think that's a good size, it's not too big. And the spectrum panel will automatically adjust anyway. And if you zoom out, we can still see the outline of what the actual window size is, but because of the transparency, we cannot see that when we run the program. So let's go to Project, Window Settings, and let's change the width to 350 and the height to 106. After that, we just need to adjust the anchor preset of the interface node, and that should be it. Now for some monitors, this may be a little bit too small, so you can easily adjust that by going to Project Settings. So something you could do, by example, is doing the width times 2, the height times 2. But if you were to run it like this, you will notice the UI does not scale properly. To fix that, we go back into our project settings under Window tab and we change the scale as well with the times 2, so scale times 2. And now we have a giant audio recorder. But for this project, I will just put it back to the size that I had before. And this is basically the UI complete, for now at least. Creating UI in Godot is really easy. You don't really need to do a lot to get things to look the way that you want. There's no struggling with figuring out the properties, everything is nicely labeled. I personally really like making UI for software inside of Godot. In the next video we will be going over the programming side of things. So yeah, the audio spectrum, we will make the buttons work, we will make the recording and the saving work. I personally think that it will be a very interesting episode. It has a lot of things going on, a lot of, yeah. You will see, just watch episode 3. In the episode after that, we will go over preparing the audio recorder for releasing it, which will include doing translation stuff. And one of the more interesting parts, we will also create our own export template to make the build size of the audio recorder smaller. And in the last episode, I will show you how to publish the audio recorder and how to make an automatic workflow to make the audio recorder build with every new version. Like automatically built with a press on a button. But yeah, the next episode will be about the programming side of things. So I hope everybody's excited for that. And also a very big thank you to all my Ko-fi supporters for supporting me. If you want to support this series and future series and all my videos, Kozen and yeah, anything that I do, please go to my Ko-fi page in the description. Thank you very much and I'll see you all in the next one.